Could tensions be lowering in the UK after months of labour strikes? Well, the British government said Tuesday it will implement a new pay deal covering more than 1 million nurses after a majority of unions voted for the offer. However, other nursing unions have rejected the deal, while teachers' unions are talking about ratcheting up their walkouts this year. With the UK government resistant to union demands so far, May looks like it could be a busy month for strikers.
Hundreds of thousands of public sector workers have been taking part in strikes in recent weeks, with many more industrial actions planned. It's one of the strongest strike waves in the United Kingdom in decades. Persistent double-digit inflation and a back-breaking cost of living crisis continue to take a toll on the lives of the millions in the UK.
Cost of transport is more expensive each year. My salary is going down with inflation going up. Food bills are rising. Our weekly food bill has more than doubled in the last year, and it's just no longer affordable.
It's not only health workers. Teachers are also organizing coordinated strikes as they seek to increase pressure on the government in a dispute over pay.
The government needs to listen. It's just not good enough. We can't let this continue. We can't, we shouldn't have to keep going on strike to make a government listen. Situation is bad. They need to come to the table. They need to listen to people who know what they're talking about.
The National Education Union has called for 2 strikes in recent weeks, affecting 22,000 schools. The action comes after the NEU rejected a pay offer. The UK government is criticising the labour actions, saying they're not doing any good.
It's incredibly disappointing that the unions are going on strike. Strikes do not add any value. They only cause damage, and particularly to those young people that you were talking about.
Other public sector workers are now adding their voices to those of the nurses and teachers, saying enough is enough. And this is going all the way to the Crown itself. Even parking attendants in Westminster are set to strike this week, including on the day of the King's coronation on Saturday, after a new pay offer was rejected. But the ceremony looks like it will be quite a spectacle, no matter the circumstances.
Vicky Price is Chief Economic Advisor at the Center for Economics and Business Research. She joins me now for more. Vicky, before we get into the economics behind these labor actions, I want to ask you, as a Londoner who's been living through these strikes in recent weeks, do you have the impression that the intensity has been growing? We read here about the coordination amongst these unions. We see how many different sectors are coming out. What's your impression? What have you seen?
Yes, although some unions, of course, have settled or are balloting their members to see whether some of the offers that have been made are going to be acceptable or not, quite a lot of others are coming out and intensifying their pressures. So yes, in London, you feel it. Of course, you hear all the stories about the impact of the ambulance worker strikes and nurses strike, which is important. But then, of course, people who are looking after children, not being able to send them to school today, for example, there's a strike in quite a lot of the London schools. So at a certain age, above a certain age, people can't send their kids there, so they have to work from home. Rail, of course, which had been so disrupted for a while, those strikes are beginning again this month, which everybody had hoped that would have been the end. So I'm afraid, yes, life is interrupted, and the impact on the economy, of course, is quite significant as well.
When we look at this NHS deal, a one-off payment of 2% of salaries this year, a 5% raise next year, is this a template for resolving further strikes? Is this essentially what's being discussed, is a collection of one-off payments with raises? And what does that really mean for these workers?
Well, the one-off raises, of course, mean that it doesn't get consolidated into your wage bill for the government at any rate, or for whichever department has to pay it, which means, therefore, that their costs when they increase their wages in the following year are considerably less, because the upscale that you get is not from such a high level. So that's good news for those who are paying it, but not particularly good news for those who receive it, even though it might solve a temporary cost of living issue, which, as we know, has been a very, very important part of why those demonstrations are out there and why people are striking. So yes, nevertheless, I think we are going to see that type of offer being accepted more widely, because frankly there isn't very much else that is on offer. And we've got to bear in mind that the reason why it is so bad in the UK is that we've had a long period of austerity after the financial crisis. We had years of public sector, in particular, public sector freeze in wages, except perhaps for some of the lower paid ones. And of course, we had public sector freeze again during the COVID crisis. So whereas the private sector has been able to compensate a little bit more the increases in cost of living for their employees, this has not been the case in the public sector. And if you look at the longer term impact on wages, and that's why one particular union, the nurses union, is sticking out for a better offer than the one you suggested, is because there has been such a withdrawal, if you like, of spending power over such a long period of time that something more needs to give really to satisfy them.
We'll have to leave it there for now. That's Vicky Price. She's Chief Economic Advisor at the Center for Economics and Business Research. Thank you, Vicky.